Hello, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube, and welcome to a bit of a Lite Fanalysis with Reti4 and Antoine Bandelet.
What's up, guys?
Today we're going to be talking about the current state of Star Wars as a whole and bits of news updates that have been coming out this past few weeks. Antoine, take us away with the talking points.
Yeah, what prompted this was a article posted by Variety, which is a Hollywood blog magazine, or it used to be a magazine. I mean, they still have a magazine, but now because online and digital, it's more digital now. And it was written by, actually, I don't even know the writer. Who is the writer? We should credit the person who wrote this. Sonia Sauria. Probably said that wrong. But I thought it was pretty interesting. I'm going to read the first paragraph, just kind of like set us up for what we're going to be discussing. It reads, "It is astonishing to me," and when I'm saying me, I'm saying Sonia, that in just a few years, my enthusiasm about the latest announcement of a new Star Wars film has gone from giddy, barely contained excitement to complete indifference, if not, at times, a more... Do you want to take away that word? Because I cannot say that word. It's a new word to me.
Rancorous.
Rancorous frustration. The announcement this week that Game of Thrones showrunners D.B. Weiss and David Benioff are slated to helm an entire film series of the beloved science fiction franchise felt like a nail in the coffin of something I used to love. This rang true to me, not just because of how she said that, she went from being giddy about new Star Wars to like kind of being just indifferent to it, but also another person that I follow, his name is Jeremy Johns. He's a movie reviewer on YouTube. Has similarly in his I think his trailer review for Solo said the same thing, that he's now just like an indifferent participant in his excitement for Star Wars. And if you guys know Jeremy Johns, you know how when he was first talking about Star Wars, when it was first being announced, he would bring out his Star Wars blanket and put it on like a cape and be like, "Dun dun, nothing but Star Wars." And now he's like kind of like just kind of enjoying it. And I feel like that's something that I also have been feeling for Marvel, even though much of the Marvel Cinematic Universe I've been enjoying. They're fine movies, but I feel like I can just throw them away and kind of forget about them, and that there's only a few nuggets that are really great. Like Homecoming for me last year was really great, but something like Thor Ragnarok I forgot within a week. And what this episode is going to be about is the fear of this happening to Star Wars, because as we know, not only are the Game of Thrones creators, taking on this new franchise, but so is Rian Johnson, who surprisingly got the green light on his new franchise without having a story or an outline at all. So I don't know. How do you feel? I'm sorry, I'm like ranting right now, like this is a single man thing.
No, it's fine.
Go
it's
ahead,
fine.
Callie.
I'm of a similar opinion to you. I mean, with Marvel, with regards to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I think that's the biggest comparison to work with here in the terms of the whole kind of the cultural shift to large scale continuities in film franchises. It is definitely the way they're taking Star Wars at the moment, and I think that the idea there's a big discussion about kind of franchise fatigue, kind of a shift away from genre fatigue, and moving on to that as a whole. That people are starting to feel with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I think most of that is down to the way they do the films and the way they frame it on the whole, the kind of the single notes that go for each of them. Like you've spoken before about bathos. Pretty much all of the films have bathos. They'll hit a specific dramatic scene, they'll switch to a comedic moment. That's something, for example, that is throughout all of the films. They're all superhero films, so there's the genre attachment there. And why I think it's important to acknowledge that is because with Star Wars, that it doesn't have that attachment. Or at least, and this is the point I'm trying to make here rather inadequately, there is no need for it to have a central kind of genre or style attached to it. Where the problem lies is that they will do that, because they'll look at the success of previous Star Wars films and they'll think, oh, okay, it needs to be Star Wars. This film, this story you've brought to us, this idea you brought to us isn't Star Warsy enough. That kind of ethos and that mentality is going to be what brings about the continued kind of dilution of the franchise for me, because it's such an expansive universe. You can tell any story. We've spoken about it before in other episodes. Any story you can tell in the Star Wars universe, pretty much no matter what you want to think of. Horror, detective stories.
Yeah, that seems
romance.
like behind the scenes. That seems like that's what's kind of been happening, because with I think his name was Garrett Edwards. Garrett Edwards. When there was that whole debacle about Rogue One needs to be like reshot, is because they brought him in because he was supposed to be a different take on Star Wars. But then when he did make it like a very intense war movie, they're like, oh wait, let's like string that back. Yeah. And then of course with I always forget the guys who made the Lego movie, their names, but though that pair of directors, same situation. They were like, oh no, you're making it like too much into like a comedy. It's just like riff raff raff. And then they brought in Ron Howard to kind of like helm that in and kind of bring it in. So yeah, I agree with that. And I think because before we were discussing about why is it that the expanded universe is getting or gets general good praise for the different things that it does versus kind of like the Star Wars franchise. And the reason for that, I think, is because we aren't really. I mean, I just watched Rogue One. I want to say a few weeks ago, whatever, and I didn't realize how much I liked it because it felt like different, for much of it. It didn't feel like I was. I mean, I still definitely felt like I was watching a Star Wars movie, but I was getting a different take. I was seeing different kinds of people in the world, and I felt like I was actually seeing how the Empire was, pushing people down and why they wanted to fight against the machine, versus where sometimes with the bigger, fantasy epics, you don't really get the small man a lot of the time. I want to see more of that. I like how you're saying like horror film and stuff like that. Like let's get that for Star Wars.
I think you touched on it a bit there actually. You said how you felt like you were watching Star Wars. What you didn't necessarily feel like, or what you shouldn't necessarily have to feel like, is that you're watching a Star Wars film. I think that's the difference between the kind of viewpoint on the EU, not because it's anything different in terms of execution, but because of the way it's the medium. They don't feel the need to kind of, we need to design it so it feels like a Star Wars film because it needs to have these beats and this kind of finale and this kind of epic feel. They're telling book stories, game stories, comic stories. They can focus on the feel of Star Wars rather than the Star Wars.
And usually
film.
Much smaller.
Yeah, smaller, completely different tones, completely different simple things as well, just medium level decisions that they have to make. Being able to tell stories with aliens as the main characters because of the expression options in comics, or the just complete irrelevancy of budget on visual designs and costumes that might be in books that films have to deal with. Stuff like that can suffuse it and give you more variation, more inspiration for those mediums, but. The need to kind of focus on people who want to go and watch a Star Wars film don't want to watch a romance, a chick flick, or a noir detective story, or a horror zombie film. That's not Star Wars. They want to see that. If they're going to a Star Wars film, they want Star Wars. We need to get away from that mentality and focus on the universe and what it feels like to be in a Star Wars experience rather than a film.
And that's the proper way, I think, of expanding this into a film franchise, the way they want to do it now. Because if you do continue just giving us that same thing over and over, it's going to get stale, and it's going to get stale very fast.
It already is.
One of the things that Sonya, it already is. I actually agree. But one of the things that Sonya says in the article, and she equates it to the Marvel stuff, is that with the Marvel movies, it's always like gotta defeat big alien invasion space thingy, or what was it, what's that meme people keep talking about like the hole in the sky or whatever, and it's like gonna destroy something or whatever, like that thing that happens with like superhero films, but making it more just about like individual plights, and not so much about like grander things, so that it does still feel fresh.
I think that's one of the advantages of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, actually, is because even though the average film from that kind of franchise is average, I enjoy all of them. I can't think of one that I thought, that was terrible.
None of them are bad.
Yeah, the lowest quality level for those for me is kind of that was about it.
Right.
With like exceptions on a scene level, I thought, that was terrible, or could have been done better, that kind of thing. The thing they get so right is that it's the character execution. Even if they're taking steps away from the characters as shown in the comics, they do them for reasons that you can understand and rarely do it in the first place anyway. They nail the characters almost always. It's what brought up Iron Man into the public consciousness. No one really, in terms of the mainstream audience, knew anything about Iron Man, and now he's
really cared about him.
Superhero that people think of. And that's what they focus on. They focus on getting the characters right and telling the stories through the lens of the characters. That's why they can be fresh without having to shift in tone or kind of film style, because they're focusing on the people involved in the stories. In Star Wars, because you're not confined to Earth, modern day Earth setting, you have infinite possibilities for character choices, for story choices, and such like that. So if you don't then take those options, it feels more stale more quickly, even just by that front. You've got such a massive universe to work with. Use it. On top of all the advantages Marvel has.
And what Jeremy Johns, also the same movie reviewer, says is that it feels like right now that Star Wars is trying to catch up to whatever is happening in today, which is like the Marvel stuff, and then maybe like for the latest solo trailer, it was Guardians of the Galaxy. They're like, oh, this was like Guardians of the Galaxy. They're getting a crew together, stuff like that. Versus where Star Wars used to be at the front of all of that, and people were catching up to be like Star Wars. So it feels like it's playing like this game of trying to be something, not trying to be something else, but trying to be like everyone else, and looking for that profit. I feel like more than looking for any kind of like artistic
sure.
Value in that way.
They're riding the
although
trends
some people would
making...
argue that Last Jedi, because of how bold and different it was, it tried to do that. But I feel like the ways in which that was trying to be bold and different weren't really. I mean, we discussed that already in our Last Jedi review. So if you want to watch that, this is your first video watching us, you can see what we discussed about that. Oh my God, I had a thought that just slipped my mind. I was trying to segue. Yes. What do you feel about, by the way, D.B. Weiss and David Benioff taking on Star Wars and what that means for whatever franchise they're going to be doing?
I think it depends on what kind of leeway they're given. It makes mention in the article a specific point in terms of the violence. There's a concern that they bring up in the article about how, extreme violence that is relied so heavily on for Game of Thrones, which fits the setting and fits the kind of audience for that story, that won't fit Star Wars. If we start seeing a massive violence in Star Wars, it won't fit the tone of, this isn't Star Wars. We don't want to see that here. Which goes back to my point about the whole the tonal shift and the idea of making a Star Wars film experience. You could have anything plugged into the Star Wars franchise, or rather the Star Wars universe, and not have it, taint the franchise's feel or experience as a whole. If they go into this with the leeway to, bring what they want to the story, not necessarily the violence, they don't need to tell a story with that, and it certainly isn't something that is required to, reach the quality of Game of Thrones. It's not what makes it good, but having the the ability to make the choices they want to make for the reasons they want to, and the freedom to breathe within their own story they're trying to tell. If they go with that, and their general quality holds up in the first place, I think it will be a good thing. Doesn't speak, or it doesn't seem that they're necessarily going to get that because they're making films rather than series, which seems of an odd choice. If you've got two people who are really, really good with series work,
right?
Why would you not? And why would Star Wars not be automatically given a series in the first place? Because again,
right,
the expansive universe is perfect for it. It seems
and something
odd.
that brings that up too is that the fact that they were brought in makes you feel like that it's being turned into like something that's just being showrun and not really necessarily being made into like these individual movies. It's more about like building it out as like this big trilogy or franchise or multiverse, whatever it's going to be. But I mean, would you, despite the later seasons of Game of Thrones, where I think we agree we both are waning on Game of Thrones, right? Is that?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yep.
The quality.
Do
has
you think
declined.
they do characters well? Concerning our earlier conversation about characters.
In Game of Thrones in general? These two, I think these two do them very well. How much of it is the fact that they had previous material to build on in the first place? Is up for debate but they do add scenes that weren't in the books that are extremely
good. They did add the scene with Arya and Tywin. There was one with Arya and Tywin.
Yeah, it's the first. It's funny how that's the first thing that comes to mind because it's the same thing for me. Scenes like that are excellent. But how much again is that down to the writing as opposed to actual character arcs and approaches? Because really that was an amazing scene. It was amazingly well written, but that could just be down to good dialogue rather than character work. But like you said, it fits the character of Arya and the story they're trying to tell in that series and in that season specifically. Whether or not they'll bring that over to Star Wars without the baseline provided by like a previous work, I'm not sure. We'll have to see. But I think the biggest thing for these two and whether or not they'll be good for Star Wars is whether or not they can carry the quality across, obviously, but also that they're given the freedom to. If someone comes along and says, that's not Star Wars-y, that's not what we're looking for here, can't have that. People are looking for Star Wars, they're looking for this, and they don't let them redefine what it is Star Wars can do as a medium for the mainstream audience that haven't seen the books, the comics, the games, then I think we're going to have problems.
Yeah, because that's what Star Wars did in the first place. And anytime one of the expanded universe materials took Star Wars and just twisted it just a little bit, not a lot. You don't always want to twist it too far.
Not a complete divergence. No, definitely not. But just a step
if you
away.
twist a little bit, that's what makes some of the great things great because you have that. For instance, Thrawn, like for once you don't have a Force user villain. You have like just a regular dude who's just a genius. Like that little twist on it, like that was like one of the best trilogies of the early expanded universe. Like things like that, I think Divergent is cool, or even the Force Unleashed. Though I think you and me aren't as. I think you like Force Unleashed more than me.
I doubt it. I really don't like those games.
Oh, okay.
But
still, like,
I
that was a
understand what they were
twist
doing.
that
I
people
appreciated.
enjoyed, you know?
I appreciated
Yeah.
what they were trying to achieve and the quality with which they did so. It wasn't my cup of tea for the most part.
Right.
But the simple things, like you said about the war film kind of idea that was Rogue One before it was changed.
Right, and that's how
later
they
on.
promoted it too. Because
Yeah.
I was there at that not conference, what we call it, it was a convention, but
Yeah.
it was it was just a show for that, and they showed like concept art, and
Presentation,
it was like
demonstration, whatever it is.
you could see it's people coming in. They were coming in on gunships, and it was like raining and stuff like that, and they were just going in like guerrilla warfare. But like none of that really carried over to the movie. It was more like adventure.
The showrunners don't fully appreciate, I think, the power that and the respect an audience feels for just being able to sit in the moment. Sitting on that gunship with the rain hammering down on the helmets of the troopers, and there's kind of just standing there breathing. There's power in those small moments where nothing is really happening. We're not, there's no plot happening. There's no fancy explosions. Just a moment where you feel like you're there and you're in that scene with the characters. That feeling can be spread out to every genre, every story, every narrative, and we'll feel like we're in the Star Wars universe. That's what they need to capture.
I totally wanted that in the first Battlefront game, even in the second Battlefront game. But like, I felt like I was like, oh, okay, they're gonna do a new Battlefront game, and if they do a single player campaign, it could be a lot like the way the early Call of Duty games were, where you're in that first person perspective, and you could just be like a stormtrooper, just in a gunship about to set down. And it's just you having a natural conversation with like your soldier buddies, and they're talking about regular stuff. Like, usually with Star Wars, we see, stormtroopers are just like, oh, they're nothing face, they're just fodder. But like to have like them just talking, the same way that real life, like the way we have military films now, or just how real military people speak to each other, like, cracking jokes at each other or stuff like that. Like having that kind of like of a banter before you go into like, and then like the gunship drops and you come down and you're like going into the Battle of Endor, but then you've already had this like, squad, as you have
built up the characters so you can care about them, have a little bit of investment before just throwing them.
Yeah, kind of like Republic Commando had that a little bit.
That was where I was leading with
gritty,
it. Yeah, that was where I was leading with it. You said about the war film for that Rogue One scenario. The Republic Commandos is an example of how the EU stepped away from the Star Wars kind of feel, and they brought in, they had the kind of military, because I got the idea from when you mentioned Thrawn. There's like this military feel to it. They're focusing on the boots on the ground kind of. Just simple stuff like using military, language, stuff that people aren't immediately going to recognize, but they put that into that frame, and then they give the military buffs a kind of way into Star Wars. They can do the same for people who like chick flicks, people who like detective noir, people who like horror. Those are the examples that keep coming to mind. But that is something they can do. People who don't care about Star Wars and high sci-fi or science fantasy fiction can be brought in and feel the kind of presence of this universe through these stories.
Something else that we lost was Star Wars 1313, and everybody I feel like was excited for that same reason, because you weren't playing as a Jedi, or you weren't like doing some huge conflict. It was just about surviving under Coruscant's shitbag underneath miles and miles underneath or near to the core.
Yeah,
so like I think that kind of thing.
All the kind of stories that are available. Core of Coruscant. Live. What are the street life of Coruscant's like? What is the street lives of Coruscant like? The Twi'lek world, the political and cultural situation going on there, all the different ways stories they could tell in that situation. Just a character piece of how a Twi'lek currently lives their lives. That would be a great story. Naboo, love story on Naboo, a proper one done well, probably this time. These are things that can happen.
Here's one. I know you guys haven't read it yet. I think I should probably force you guys to read it because it's actually the best book in the canon right now. It's called Lost Stars, which at first was promoted as like a young adult romance. People are like, I don't want to read that. What is that? But you actually read it. It's a fantastic book, and it's still very much integrated into Star Wars. It's very much a Star Wars story, but it's also a love story done really, really well.
I'll have to give it a look, that one, yeah. But stories like that, the stories they would have previously told in the EU, because, that for one thing, they're just cheaper to make. You can write a book extremely cheaply compared to making a film.
Which is why I'm writing books right now instead of books for films.
But they need to take that mentality and drop the cheapness, because they've got infinite money. It's Star Wars. Slap the logo on. It's going to make your money back. Until they start killing it off with this genre fatigue problem that we're talking about.
Which we're talking about right now.
Franchise
don't cheapen your franchise.
Yeah, use it. take the risks, do the new stories. Why would anyone want to see a Star Wars chick flick? Lots of people will, and it doesn't matter if they don't. Try it, see what happens. You've got that leeway at the moment, and don't waste it.
Especially with 50 Shades of Grey dying off.
God.
We need to slot something in for that.
God, yeah, but there were people who will oppose it. Obviously, think I don't care about this story.
There is a version of Episode 2 that could have been great. There could have been a love story between.
We're currently writing a Fanalysis, Connor and Evan and I, talking about how it's the first kind of introduction of framing our opinion on the prequels. How all of us love the prequels for what they are. They are deeply flawed, broken, terrible films. But the masterpieces beneath, shunt this scene left,
right?
Change this dialogue, right? And it could have been a masterpiece. And people, I think, discard that kind of idea. They think, yes, I can understand why. The accepted consensus for it is completely understandable, but they just throw away all of the good with the bad, and it's a waste in my eyes.
Yeah, but I mean, one thing I do like about what Rian Johnson has and DB and David is that they are doing new things with Star Wars. So I'm hoping that it is like distinctly different stuff that we are going to get, because I think that would help freshen up. Because like, for instance, with Solo, I think the reason why I'm kind of like meh about it is because I don't really care about having a Solo origin story. And then also on top of that, like the trailer didn't really look that great. Like Solo, what's the guy's name? Eldridge, something. The actor who's playing
don't know.
Solo, young Solo.
Don't know.
I don't know his name, but like his dialogue, the One Piece dialogue they actually like showcased in the trailer was like, that doesn't.
Feel like Han for one.
Yeah, it doesn't have to. You don't have to have the same cadence as him, whatever. You can have a different take, whatever. But you have to like have the same personality. Like I don't know. It was kind of. Yeah, it just didn't work. It didn't work. But like
too early to say for him, in my opinion. But I'm with you on the film as a whole.
But I feel like, and this happens a lot with film franchises, is that when you have trailers and they don't show a lot of dialogue, it's usually because they want to put that off for as long as possible. So you don't know or you don't understand fully of why it's not working. I mean, but again, yeah, we don't know. We don't have enough yet. But I mean, just from behind the scenes, like he had an acting coach that was brought in.
Yeah, I know, not a good first sign.
That kind of stuff is like, okay. The same thing happened with Hayden Christensen. He had an acting coach come in on episode 2 and 3. So. But yeah, I mean, I think Hayden did better in episode 3 though. But
again, with the prequel thing, I think
it's mostly dialogue that hurt.
Yeah, his direction and dialogue was what crippled him, if you ask me.
Yeah, because there's some actors that need direction, when others can just do it on their there's Ian McGregor who can just do it on their own, or Ian McDiarmid who can just do it on their own.
Ewan McGregor is the kind of pivotal example of that. He takes anything and makes it work somehow. That's shown in most films.
But there's some people like Natalie Portman. Natalie Portman is a phenomenal actress, but if she's not well directed, you get Padme. But again, that's getting off. What it is.
But your point about the characters in that trailer, I completely agree. I'm with you on that. I think we'll have to see how it turns out. Maybe we'll get lucky. Maybe they'll pull something out of the hat.
I mean, I like Khaleesi though. She looks good.
Yeah, but I
like her though.
But the trailer for me as a whole, I was like, The thing that stood out to me was the Falcon.
What I did like about it though, is again that the look of it. Like I like being inside the Star Wars universe. So like when it wasn't really about the story itself, like banding people together and seeing what Han Solo was doing. When it was just the shots of just like him on, which I'm assuming he's on Corellia. Like that's where the movie's starting. When he's like, I want to be the best pilot. I'm assuming when he's like in his little speeder, like stuff like that. I was like, oh, that's kind of a cool thing. The underbelly of like Corellia or something like that. But what was I going with that? Oh yeah, no, I like the feeling of the world, like seeing those shots. I was like, oh, I like being in it. I just don't like the stories that they're going with. Or I think that doing things that we already know, like with Rogue One, with Death Star plans, and then with Solo, just young Solo. I'd like that Johnson and the Game of Thrones dudes are doing different things, and I hope that the different things are, as we were saying, something that can keep it fresh and that are different from the same that we've gotten so far. Yeah, no,
I'm with you there. They just need to capture the feel, and no matter what you give me, at least I'll have that much. I'll be in the universe, no matter what story you're telling or how you're telling it through the characters. But like I say, the fact they didn't focus on the dialogue, the fact they didn't give us many moments of breathing. I mean, granted, it's a teaser trailer, so it's not going to have too much time to spend on that. But,
right, it's not going to be too much time.
But still, they didn't really give us a single lingering moment in that trailer. It was designed to be a trailer and nothing else. It wasn't really a glimpse of what they'd given us. So we'll have to wait and see. The thing that stood out to me was that the cleanliness of the Falcon, which makes absolutely no sense.
Oh yeah,
I don't care if it's new or newer. It cannot have gone from that to what we know of the Falcon in this time frame they're given. It just doesn't make any sense.
Saying, like, it looks like they were watching it with like mud and dirt or something.
Yeah, it's just crazy. It does not make any sense to me. Which it stands out and is like, to me, it's one of those decisions where they've gone, oh well, it's new, so let's make it look new, and you go, oh yeah, that's cool, let's do it, and not really put any thought into it behind that.
Right, because as Pablo Hidalgo said, like it's actually closer to the New Hope, like the original trilogy timeline and Rogue One, than it is the Empire, which makes it go like, oh, they got that dirty pretty quick, like, you know.
And then it didn't also get
like,
dirtier after that to the next, to the sequels. It's like, so why is it? What were they doing exactly? But yeah, exactly. we'll see how
that's
the film
more
goes.
of like a nitpick than anything. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, like we both agree that we just want to see Star Wars not get stale, which it easily can, because it's going to be so prolific for like the next few years. Like we're going to have, like right now, what we have like at least 7 films planned, like at this point right now. And because they're being done by multiple groups, that means they're going to be coming out very quickly, very similar to the Marvel, where we get like 3 or 4 Marvel movies a year, something like that,
Well, even, to me, I think they're going to get stale. I think they're going to die out in the future. I just don't think they have to. I think that's something that the focus of the conversation needs to be on the fact that isn't because they're making so many, that that's not the problem. There's a reason that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been working for 10 years, and it's because they've been pacing themselves and designing the kind of arcs they want to be going on, for the most part, very well. You need a plan, overarching plan to work these films and these stories and these narratives into, or you need to dive into off the mainstream spectrum and go and just tell specific individual stories in the universe and have that be the only thing that really links them to Star Wars in approach.
For instance, one of your favorite characters is Scout, who is an extremely small character in the scope of Star Wars. Like something like that. For those of you who aren't not familiar, Dark Rendezvous, or Yoda Dark Rendezvous, is where she comes out in.
Elizabeth N. Wandung Esterhazy, one of the greatest characters in Star Wars. And that book also has the greatest interpretation of Yoda, in my opinion, as well, including the originals. But yeah, just moments like that. Give this, and that's a good book, actually. There are loads of individual scenes in that book where you just feel like you're sat in the Star Wars universe with the characters. It's so memorable for that.
But I feel like I'm starting to sort of resolve myself to being like a casual fan of Star Wars now, because of where it's going currently and what I think it's probably going to get into the future. Like before, I used to be like really, really hype about this stuff, and now like I feel like I'm just like, okay, I think I'm just now just. It's one of those things where I just go. It's like the theater once a year or twice a year, however they're going to do it, and I just go like, cool, that was a movie, and then like walk away from it, and then really like discuss it or talk about it or think about it more than that, as I have with like the previous movies and the previous material, and that's what I fear the most in all this. It's becoming a casual of Star Wars, where it's just something I kind of like.
Well, the question is, will you become a casual of Star Wars or casual of the new Star Wars moving forward? Because I know Matt likes points. Yeah, because it's worth mentioning. Because Matt, for example, says he's quite happy with you do your thing over here, Star Wars. I'm going to go back to what you were, and not because he has a problem with the difference. Not because he's a problem with the difference. He's very clear on that, and I think we're all the same in that regard. Just the fact that he's happy with what we've got. He's happy with the stories that have been told, and the fact that they're still there, and he can still go and watch them. I'm in that category.
Although you mentioned something about the Fringe, something like what was that?
I read a comment. Oh God, I've forgotten the name of the commenter now. Apologies, but you know who you are. Previous video that we did mentioned that the French translation of the Legends material has been pulled. The rights to do it has been pulled, I think.
So that's weird. I thought they were already translated. So what were they?
I think
in the process of translating.
I'm not sure. I haven't had a chance to look into it, but it was something that was mentioned. Yeah. Look into that yourselves, guys, and see what you can find. Something about the translation for the French version has been pulled, and they're not going to be doing it moving forward, or some such. But I haven't been able to do the research on that one, so don't quote me. But yeah,
that sucks.
It does, rather. But we have the material that we had before, and that's for me. That's my Star Wars, and I'll be open to what comes forward. If I see a film and think that's amazing, I'm happy to take it as that. But I'm much the same as you. I think they're going to be going the wrong routes, in my opinion. Just as a mechanic, film approach. cinematic universe of Marvel is going the same way, I think, though, because they've done everything well so far, and they're doing it well at the moment. But I think
Right.
after the next few films, after the Infinity War series, they're going to have to stop, because at this point they firmly have, which is miraculous, they've even managed to achieve this. They firmly, established and acquired a status quo. So, as with the comics, they're going to need to shake that up. The actors that are whose contracts are going to be running out of time
Right.
moving forward, they're going to have to be replaced with the characters. Say 5 films into Spider-Man, they're going to have to get rid of current Spider-Man and bring Miles Morales if they want to have the film goer's attention
Well,
kept.
they are actually having Miles Morales, but it's an animated film. I don't know if you've seen the trailer, but
okay,
it's called something Spider-Verse or something like that. I don't know what it's called.
I don't know, because they've incorporated him into many of the animated works at the moment. But if they want to keep, if they get 5 films down the line with Spider-Man, they need to then bring in the new character, kind of tell the stories that way, and have the new generation be brought up with it. If they want the MCU to keep going, decades
If they
in
want
the
to
future,
continue it, yeah.
they're hitting the point where they now need to make some major changes to future-proof the material. And I think they might be able to do that, hopefully. The question is whether Star Wars will, and I'm very much hoping that it will. I just don't think it's likely, which is kind of where I am with it.
We shall see. Only the future can tell these things. But I think that's pretty much it. That is this day's analysis of the state of Star Wars. It's kind of like the state. Kind of like a state of view. We should have had like a podium in front of us and it was been like the State of the Union for like the United States when the president comes up. This is the state of Star Wars right now.
Yeah. What will happen moving forward? I wonder. But yeah. So.
But let us know what you guys think in the comments. Like, how are you guys feeling about Star Wars right now? What do you feel about its future and its current status quo within the movie cultural zeitgeist?
Yeah, give us your thoughts and let us know what you think in the comments section down below. I am Reti4. This has been our first kind of Fanalysis Lite, and I still don't have an outro.
This is Antoine and Reti4. As always, peace, love, and may the force be with you.
Unless it's not now.
I was waiting for your always. I was like, you like always. You like your always.
I do like my always, but that's the point of this video, isn't it? Will it be always?
Will it be all? Oh, damn. What an outro.
Goodbye.